It's great to be part of Transformation Week, which MediaCom are hosting for the third year running. So welcome to day 5 and happy Friday. So today we're going to be looking to the future. And I'm going to be speaking about emerging media channels on the short to medium term horizon. There's some really fascinating and exciting opportunities for brands ahead, with new creative ways to reach consumers and new creative ways to understand your customers. So I'm going to cover 3 emerging media channels. I'm going to speak about wearables, personalized digital out of home, and voice or voice search. And we're going to have a deep dive on voice search with a special guest, Damien Bianchi, who runs our WPP Voice Lab. Damien and I will be chatting about what brands should be doing now to ensure that they're relevant in this channel and how you should be planning for your brand's future. Now, before I go further, let me just introduce myself. So I'm Nadine Thompson. I'm the Global Chief Technology Officer for MediaCom. And my role at MediaCom is to use technology to solve our clients' challenges and drive opportunities for their business, and to, of course, help MediaCom and our business evolve. And I do this through building technology solutions, scaling innovation, and scanning the horizon for future opportunities. So let's talk about the future on emerging media channels or marketing channels. So wearables. In 2019, over 60 million wrist-based wearables, that's smartwatches and Fitbits, were shipped across the world. Now, wearables provide 2 opportunities for brands when it comes to marketing. They provide insights, so information about individual consumers, and they also provide new ways to reach a consumer. And brands are starting to position themselves for this future opportunity. If we think about insights, at the moment, wearables collect data on lifestyle, movement, sleep, location, health. But many wearables are now starting to collect or use biometric sensors to collect data like temperature, movement, heart rate, and skin moisture, with a growing ability to bring this information together to sense your emotional state. So are you happy or are you sad? Are you stressed or are you excited? And there's a real opportunity for brands here to deliver hyper-personalized and effective ads and measure a consumer's reaction in the future. But right now we can see brands starting to take opportunities within this channel. So one of our clients, Walgreens, has recently partnered with Fitbit to integrate data from customers into its own app. Now, wearables provide also will provide new ways to reach a consumer. And the opportunity is larger than just smartwatches or Fitbits. Think about smart headphones, think about smart glasses. So we saw the rise and fall of Google Glass, but we'll see another evolution of this technology infrastructure. Smart lenses, so an evolution past glasses. Head-mounted displays, which are used in manufacturing a lot at the moment, and connected clothing or wearable clothing, obviously wearable clothing, but clothing which is technically connected to the internet. And that's providing us a whole new industry that's opening up in that area. So in the future, you will be able to do things like displaying a customized offer, say in real time, to someone's smart glasses, or maybe an audible offer to their hearables, for say a Mars bar as a hungry consumer walks past a store, or do things like a personalized pillow recommendation to someone's smartwatch when they've woken up and not slept well that night. And as with all emerging media channels, there are considerations, from creating ads that are impactful on a small display to take into account different screen dimensions of wearables and different ad formats. And of course, the ever important consideration of privacy. So we know that people want a personalized ad experience, but they also want their privacy. And GDPR and ethical media practices will ensure that consumers have control of their data. But as a brand, you need to navigate sort of a tightrope of personalization without overstepping, and also thinking about how is making it worthwhile for a consumer to share their data with you. So what should you be doing in this channel at the moment? Well, it really depends on your business, it depends on your industry. If you have a mobile app, for example, and you've got an audience on the smartwatch, it might be worth building the app for the smartwatch to start getting more knowledge of this particular channel. This is what a large pizza franchise have recently done. Whatever you do, keep your eyes on this channel. It's fast moving and ever evolving. Now I'm going to talk about the second emerging media channel today that we're going to focus on, which is personalized digital out of home. Now, digital out of home is fast replacing traditional out of home with billboards, digital signage, and screens in lifts and transport hubs on the side of roads and in our stores. And this is providing addressable out of home screens that you can change advertising content on remotely. Now, out-of-home advertising is becoming more digital, and the market is big but also growing. So right now in 2020, it's worth $7.4 billion. And if you combine this with the fact that 42% of US and UK adults, so they read or watch outdoor ads, it's a very interesting channel indeed. Now, programmatic out of home, so that's buying and selling of out of home media, is establishing a foothold in the UK. And we're seeing key suppliers now providing inventory to SSPs or supply side platforms. It's been interesting to watch Clear Channel UK, who currently represents more than 30% of the digital out of home UK market, recently sign up to integrate into a programmatic platform. So right now with digital out of home, you can place ads using sort of factors or considerations such as time, location, perhaps audience demographics in the area that the out of home infrastructure is located. You can use weather and other trends. So you could, if you sell food and beverages, perhaps show an ice cream ad when it's hot weather. If you're an entertainment brand, you could use digital out of home to show discounted tickets to a nearby event that you know you've got seats available that night in that evening's performance. COVID restrictions allowing it to go ahead, of course. And digital out of home networks are also starting to integrate with mobile data providers, and that provides with a historical and real-time view of audience demographics and movement around displays to help deliver relevant ads. But what will the future hold for digital out of home? We'll start to see the integration of sensors into displays, and this will do things like being able to recognize emotion, so analyzing facial expressions, and perhaps even image recognition, which could link a consumer to a known identity. So you could perhaps show a trailer of the latest Sony PlayStation game to a person you know loves gaming, and yesterday you also know bought a PS5 or perhaps a PS6 at that stage. You could note their reaction and then send an offer to their wearable device. Now, as with wearables, the data the public is going to be willing to provide is very much going to dictate sort of best practice for us in this area, along with us considering ethical media practices. And brands need to be thoughtful, extremely thoughtful, in how they produce personalized content. We know what is one person's utopia is another person's nightmare. According to Statista, 34% of all households in the UK have a smart speaker. That's an Amazon Echo or Google Home or the like. And by 2025, that's in 4 years' time, 75% of all households in the US are predicted to have one. If you combine this with the fact that 48% of consumers use voice assistants for general web search, so Siri or Google Assistant, and this is another interesting channel for us to be watching. Now, there's advantages for brands in using voice as a channel. You see, sound has a quicker recall, and we can absorb it when we're doing other things. So you can absorb sound as you're driving a car or making dinner. And we also know that sound can be highly emotional, and it's a great way to connect with customers. I mean, anyone that's ever had their heart broken will know the power of music. And I often look to China when I think about future trends in technology, and voice is no different in that area. So if we look at the future of voice, it's bright. In China in 2019, on their Singles Day, which is equivalent to the UK Black Friday, there was 1 million voice activated purchases. And as China moves forward, they're starting to combine voice with visuals. So it'll be sort of speakers combined with a screen, and this opens up even further opportunities for using this channel. Now let's keep diving into voice, a really interesting emerging media channel. I'm joined by Damien Bianchi, who runs our WPP Voice Lab. Welcome, Damien. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking about voice and contributing to the conversation.
Terrific. So, I mean, you're a sort of an expert when it comes to voice, and obviously have the experience of the Voice Lab. Tell us a bit about sort of your background, and tell us about the Voice Lab as well.
Yeah, so I work for a WPP company called GSI. We were acquired by Ogilvy roughly 15 years ago, so we've been a part of the WPP network for quite some time. Our bread and butter has really been developing enterprise SEO programs, helping our clients like IBM and Nestle USA and Nestle Global with developing, not only search programs, but strategy and tactics. And when the smart speaker market really started to take off, and we started to see all these devices start to emerge, we saw a natural correlation to the search world, right? It was basically almost a new interface that customers and consumers could be asking questions instead of typing them. So we developed a new technology, new platform that can, capture voice experiences and share them with our clients. And we call it our Voice Lab. We help not only our own clients, but we also partner with other opcos to help their clients establish a voice strategy and kind of dip their toes in the water in this emerging space. We produce a lot of thought leadership material, webinars, and everything in between. So it's a pretty exciting time for us right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'd sort of describe you as sort of deep experts or thought leaders when it comes to voice. Definitely. Well, let's have a conversation about why do you think brands haven't addressed voice as a channel in the past, and why do you think it's becoming more important moving forward?
Well, I think that the short answer is a lot of brands they don't understand it. Right? You say voice and it's a broad term. Are we talking about Alexa? What do you mean? And so we find that there's a lot of education that we tend to do. We do a lot of workshops to educate the executive audience and the practitioner audience about what do we mean by voice. And I think one of the reasons that a lot of brands didn't adopt a voice strategy as a marketing strategy, as like a marketing tactic and channel, is simply due to the fact that the devices weren't that sophisticated early on. So when Alexa hit the market, even I was fascinated with the fact that I could just tell it to play music, or I could set my alarm in the morning, or I could ask what the weather was.
Yep.
My daughter loves, playing her music on it. But it was almost seen as this toy, right? It kind of just sat in the living room and we talked to it and things like that. And I think a lot of brands and a lot of people have the same experience. Since then, though, not only have other devices gained market share, Google really comes to mind, as well as a lot of others, but the artificial intelligence and the experience is way better now, right? So as opposed to just asking Alexa what the weather is, you can now actually ask very sophisticated questions about brands, about products. You can ask customer service questions. You can ask, location details, all the types of things that you used to do on Google by typing it in, right? And so now that they are more sophisticated and you actually do have a slightly better experience, and we know that people have these devices sitting in their living room because everybody's sitting at home right now due to COVID, these devices, we call them brand gatekeepers. If you think about it, it's almost like having a sales rep or even a customer service rep sitting next to you, and you can really ask it anything. So we're seeing much more interest in viewing voice as a part of an overall marketing strategy now.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think if we think about the expanding ecosystem, so it's not only increased sophistication in the AI machine learning and Alexa being able to, as an example, being able to respond better to questions, and perhaps also be able to understand me better, as my Australian accent sometimes is confused her in the past. She is getting better with that. But also it is the expanded ecosystem. So Alexa in cars is something we've spoken about, or in home appliances, or AirPods that have access to Siri. I mean, that's an interesting other sort of voice channel to think about. So it is definitely expanding, and that perhaps makes it more important for brands to be really thinking about how they appear on this channel. And then what do you think brands should be doing to take the most advantage of this right now? And I mean, content's important, and how they're structuring their content. So maybe having conversational content on websites, so that when the voice devices are picking up the brand, they're having the right tone. But I mean, as your experience in the Voice Lab, it must go beyond just having the right content in the right places.
Yeah, we see it as not just like an individual tactic, right? Where you go, push the button on Alexa and turn the dial over here on Google. It really is a holistic strategy that's only going to get more sophisticated in the coming years, right? IoT and 5G are enabling all types of voice experiences on all types of, not just the smart speakers, but your phone, your refrigerator, your car, I mean, everything. So our advice today to brands is pretty simple. It's just to get in the game, right? Do an audit to understand what type of branded experience is happening in all these different scenarios that we just talked about. Assess your brand safety. Where are these answers actually coming from? Are they coming from preferred content sources?
Or
are they coming from inaccurate content sources? And that's part of what our Voice Lab does. It actually retrieves, when you ask a question to a smart speaker or any of these devices, we can retrieve where that answer came from. And we can actually pinpoint a very specific URL where the text was read to you, right? Because we talk a lot about the AI and the audio experience, but really the audio experience is happening because there's text existing behind the scenes somewhere, usually on a website. That text is read back to you in the form of an answer. So that's a big piece of it, because that comes into web content and creating voice-friendly content, right? If you think about the FAQ section of your website, most of the devices rely on that content to provide answers, because if you think about it, FAQ sections of your site are usually formed or structured in the form of a question and an answer, right? And that maps exactly to what very similar to the voice experiences that are happening on the smart speakers and devices. So getting voice-friendly content well optimized for the devices, understanding what those experiences are, with the whole goal of owning your brand, right? Owning that brand conversation that's happening. So as you think through the next 3 to 5 years, like if you were to roadmap out, what are we going to be doing with voice over a 5-year period? Year one is crawl, right? You're doing everything I just described. You're doing an audit. Maybe you're doing some workshops to educate your executive stakeholders and some of your practitioners and your digital strategists, so on and so forth. Year two, you start to think about establishing, very similar to other marketing programs, a voice center of excellence or a voice council that has not just marketing folks, but you have legal, you have customer service, you have product folks. Because the last thing you want is a customer asking a question about your product, and the answer that comes back on these devices is out of date, or it's inaccurate, or it's got the wrong pricing information.
Or it represents your brand poorly, even worse.
Yeah, and then from a customer service angle, earlier I compared, these devices to really being a customer service rep sitting next to you. Am I going to get the same experience asking, an Alexa device a customer service question that I would get if I made a phone call or if I initiated a web chat, right? So then you start to think about a database of answers to question that can feed multiple routes. So as these KPIs and all these different things start to emerge, that's kind of a, you know, if you're thinking about things 2 years out, and then long-term strategy, as I described, is really to own your brand by providing, let's say you've got accurate answers across all devices in all your priority languages, in all your priority countries, right? That's kind of the dream scenario. We've been doing this for over 2 years. We haven't encountered a brand that's that sophisticated yet,
Yeah.
but the early adopters will get there. It will definitely get there. So.
All right. Well, let's talk about sort of like skills and your perspective on developing those. I mean, I know at MediaCom we've developed some Alexa skills for clients, but it's been for the purpose of exploring the ecosystem and helping the brand understand that voice a bit more and the ecosystem of voice. And yeah, so what's your thoughts on? Is it worth building Alexa skills? And if you are going to build one, is functional value better than entertainment or branded content? What's the Voice Labs perspective?
You know, it's funny because that's one of the first questions we usually get asked.
It's like, wait, go straight to skills, is it?
Yeah, they say, oh, you do the voice stuff, so we need a skill, or how do you build a skill? And
Or the Google equivalent, I should say. I've used Alexa as in this example. Mm-mm.
yeah, so there's Alexa skills, and then Google has their version of skills, which is called actions. And really, you know, our view is they're exactly like smartphone apps were 10 years ago, where the technology, when it was released, had everybody really excited. There was a rush to, you know, create apps, and in this case, create these skills. As of today, I think there's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 100,000 skills available on the Amazon store.
Gosh.
The trouble with it is that a skill has to have an actual use, right? A lot of brands paid a lot of money to demonstrate technology, right? Hey, we've got an Alexa skill, and you know the customer uses it once and then completely forgets about it because it's nothing that would actually enhance their day or something that would they would go back to. So our opinion on Alexa skills is that they absolutely have their place. The way to approach building a skill, though, is number one, if you have the funding to build a skill, you've got to partner with someone who actually understands the sophistication of conversation and all the different question and answers and you know the way the conversation could go. They have to build in that sophistication, which can sometimes be difficult. But then most importantly, understanding what is the value to the consumer or the customer. Why would they use your skill? We saw a lot of skills. For our clients, we saw a lot of brands that were building skills. And within the first week, we saw this huge spike in usage. And then it literally dropped off and nobody had even launched the skill for 10 months and sometimes even longer. And so our advice is that if you've got the funding, you've got a partner that can build the skill, what you really need to do is understand what's the importance of a skill, right? So a great example is being able to pay your credit card, right? Let's say American Express, they might even have one, builds an Alexa skill that gives me reminders 5, 4, 3 days in advance of when my payment is due.
Yep.
And then on the day that it's due, it'll ask me, would you like to make a payment? And I say yes, and then it's taken care of. That's
and they also
wonderful.
find the money for you. That would be an extra great skill.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just a simple example of something that I would use every month, right? And I would return to it. And then probably the most important thing when it comes to skill is that it has to be part of an integrated strategic marketing plan, right? There has to be a campaign that builds awareness about the skill. Why is it useful? How can you use it? Where do you get it? And a lot of brands completely missed the boat when it came to that. They just built the skill and collected dust on the Amazon store for years. So making it a part of your integrated strategy is really critical, because skills do have a place and they can certainly be successful, but there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, I suppose it just highlights the importance of linking channels together and having an integrated media strategy. Definitely. And then if we think about just continuing on the sort of this stream of conversation around what brands can do now to ensure they're relevant on this channel or they're making the most of this channel. I mean, voice search is interesting in that you have to be really at position 0 or in the very top positions to actually even surface in a search, which is very different to display. How do brands best get themselves into that top position when it comes to voice search?
Yeah, and what you just touched on is really kind of the foundation of our practice, right? Is if I go to the desktop or my mobile phone and I start typing in something like, hey Google, what if I just typed in what is the best SUV to buy, as an example. I've got my organic links, I got paid ads, I got videos, I got images, I got all types of things that I can click on, and then click the back button if I don't like that and make another selection. With voice, you only get one response, right? Nobody's scanning 10 to 20 different variations of it. You just listen to whatever's told back to you. So the difference there is if I say, hey Google, or hey Alexa, what is the best SUV to buy? They will answer very specifically, but they'll only mention a handful of brands, right? They'll say, according to XYZ, we find that, Honda and Toyota and BMW are the best SUVs to buy. Well, if I'm Subaru, if I'm Chevrolet here in the United States, that's a concern for me, right? That means that I need to get busy creating some voice-friendly content that's going to get picked up in that answer. And that's part of what we do is we help those brands connect the dots to the web content that's going to be critical, that's read back to you via the devices.
Great. So sort of building organic SEO as part of your strategy there. Well, let's move our conversation on to what next. So what does the future for voice look like? So it's interesting, as I mentioned earlier, China is starting to pair speakers with display screens. So we're kind of seeing a combination of those particular interfaces. And that's an interesting sort of iteration of technology. And I think programmatic platforms for voice channels is something perhaps on the horizon, though not on the very short-term horizon. What's your perspective on what the future of voice holds?
So in my opinion, there's really, you can almost think of it as two swim lanes, right? The first one is around the technology itself. And I do feel that the merging of this audio experience that we have on smart speakers with the screen display is going to be, it's already starting to merge. Like Amazon has got several products that you can talk to, but you can also swipe and have like an iPad type of experience with.
Yeah.
China has several of those types of devices as well. So I do think, in the coming years, you're going to see much more of a combination of those two experiences, right? Because there's voice is very interesting, and it lends itself well to top of the funnel types of, questions and answers and experiences. But voice also does have a limit, right? There's only so many things you're going to be able to do on your smart speaker before you pick up your phone. And I want to see a picture. I want to buy that shoe. I want to do something that enables a purchase. So the emergence of those two, I think, is definitely the first swim lane. The second would be to what you alluded to, which is programmatic. Having media buying platforms begin to emerge will that absolutely happen. We've talked to people and some of our partners in Amazon that are indicating ads being worked on. When that happens, nobody knows. My prediction would be sometime in the next 2 to 3 years, it's probably likely that we'll start seeing some type of experimentation or a beta platform. What's going to be really interesting, though, is what the customer experience is like, right? So if I'm sitting in my car and I say, hey, Alexa, is there any good deals on XYZ? And the answer that comes back isn't the answer. It's first a word from our sponsor, and I have to listen to a 20-second ad. That changes the whole dynamic, and then pretty soon you'll see Alexas piling up in the garbage, I suppose. But it's definitely going to happen. It's just there's so many complexities to it, from not just from a technology standpoint, but also, as I mentioned, from a customer experience standpoint, that will have to be figured out. But I'd say realistically, the next 2 to 3 years, which quite frankly is something to start thinking about when, to your earlier point around what should brands be doing today. Starting an internal program dedicated to voice, I think it's a really smart move. Even though organic is really kind of the only play today, like creating voice-friendly content and all the things I talked about, having some folks that are plugged into what's going to be happening in the programmatic space, I think would be a smart move right now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the programmatic space will have to evolve past the here's a word from our sponsors. It's going to have to be quite clever, isn't it, really? And integrating
Yeah,
with the content it's delivering.
right.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be interesting to see. Well, terrific. That's all we've got time for today, Damien. Thank you so much for joining us. It
Yeah,
was
thanks for having me. I
it was
really enjoyed that.
and it was a great conversation, and yeah, always really interesting to hear what's happening at the Voice Lab. You're doing some really interesting work there. So if you have any questions from this event, you can email events@mediacom.com. Otherwise, thank you for joining us and have a great Friday.